In 1987, a girl was trying to hitchhike back home after she got really homesick. A light blue van stopped on the side of the road. The girl, 15-year-old Mary Vincent, asked the driver, 50-year-old Lawrence Singleton, for a ride. Lawrence agrees on taking Mary with him. Within 5 minutes of driving, Mary fell asleep in this stranger's car. When she woke up, she realized that they were going the wrong way, so Mary told Lawrence. He said it was an honest mistake and turned the car around. After a little while, the man stopped the car because he needed to go to the bathroom. Mary also got out of the car to tie her shoelaces, but while she was doing that, she was hit in the back of the head with a hammer, which knocked her unconscious. When she finally gained consciousness, she was tied up in the back of the van. The man, Lawrence, got also in the van and begins assaulting her for hours and hours. When the sun finally came up, the man frees her. But Mary's torture isn't over yet. The man grabs a hatchet from the back of the van and severs Mary's both arms off her body. Then he dumped her body under a culvert. Despite all the odds, Mary survived the attack and crawled her way on the highway where a young couple stopped and helped her. Later, Lawrence Singleton was arrested and sentenced with the death penalty.
Is her dead son on display at a museum because she is convinced he is? Chris Eric was born in Mesquite in Texas, and he was an incredibly kind guy. He absolutely loved sport. He was an incredible athlete, but he was also really religious. He was always super happy and making people laugh, but like I said, he would attend church very regularly. He was very serious about his faith. There were honestly no real signs that his life was about to end in the most tragic and unsettling way. But in 2012, when Chris was 23, he was struggling with addiction, and I believe he was taking Adderall. For some reason, the police were involved, and Chris had been ordered to go to court for something sort of substance abuse related, but charges were later dropped. Now, Chris did show up for court and headed back home afterwards to his nan's house. 2 days after, he was found dead in his bed. Chris's mum Kim said she wasn't there at the time. She was just told that he died in his sleep peacefully, but that didn't really make much sense for a 23-year-old. The initial narrative was, oh, he had a heart defect and he had a heart attack. But after Kim pressed the medical examiner, the cause of death changed. He was allegedly found to have cyanide in his system, literal poison. And despite how suspicious that sounds, officials documented his death as undetermined means and ruled it a self-unaliving. But things get even weirder. Kim was told that her son was cremated, and obviously when you have a relative cremated, you don't literally go in and watch that happen. You kind of just have to take their word for it. But later she had this horrific shock when she visited a museum in Vegas. Over a decade after her son's mysterious death, while attending this Real Bodies exhibition, she stopped dead in her tracks. The one body on display was the spitting image of her son. So much so that she was stunned into silence. She was shocked to her core. She said, I was actually looking at my son's skinned, butchered body. She said it was gut-wrenching. And apparently it wasn't just the face that looked identical. It was markings on his actual body, like scarring that Chris had, which got Kim thinking, has my son actually been sold to this museum? Now, I know this sounds crazy, but I have seen cases where family members had no idea that their loved ones' bodies were actually being sold. Families have sometimes been told a loved one was cremated when they actually weren't, but it's hard to tell whether it's true in this case. Kim is battling to get what she believes to be her dead son's body back. But the exhibit said there is no factual basis for these allegations. We extend our sympathy to the family, but the referenced specimen cannot be associated with the individual named in these claims. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think this could possibly be true?
Imagine disappearing from your home in the middle of the night at 4 years old. A massive search is launched in and around the home, and more specifically, the room where you vanished from. And this even includes cadaver dogs, but it turns up nothing. Your mom gives interviews pleading for your return, sitting on the bed where you disappeared from. And just when all hope is lost, your body is found 9 days later in the very same bed where you went missing from, under the mattress where your mom was giving interviews from, and you were reportedly there the entire time, yet somehow no one knew. That's what happened to this little girl right here, and despite a lot of blood being found on the sheets, and someone literally sleeping in her bed every single night after she disappeared, she wasn't found for 9 days, only after her room started to smell. Her bed was made every single day, and not to mention several different agencies turned that room upside down looking for her. Yet police say no foul play was involved. She just accidentally tossed and turned too much and ended up getting trapped at the foot of her bed, and then her body was hidden by a portion of her mattress. That absolutely nothing about this is suspicious. This is the mysterious death of Paulette Gabarra-Farah, and if there's ever been a case that's divided so many people and had a whole community on edge wondering how this could possibly happen, it's this one, so let's talk about it. This is Paulette Gabarra-Farah. She was only 4 years old when she mysteriously disappeared and died on March 22nd, 2010. She lived with her mom and dad, Mauricio and Lizette, and her older sister just outside of Mexico City. Paulette struggled with being able to talk, and she needed help walking due to some developmental disabilities. So she needed a little bit of extra care, which wasn't an issue because living with the family were Paulette's two nannies, Erica and Martha, who Paulette loved. By all accounts, this was a loving and hardworking, close-knit family. Paulette's dad was a businessman and her mom was a lawyer, and everyone who knew them said that they loved their kids so much. But on March 22nd, 2010, this family's lives would all be torn apart. So just the night before, Paulette, her dad, and her sister had returned home from a 3-day vacation. Her mom stayed up late waiting for them to come back, and once they did, she tucked her kids into bed like usual. Nothing was out of the ordinary, but by the next morning, Paulette would be gone. Early the next morning, Paulette's nanny Erica went into her room to check on her and get her up for the day. But Paulette wasn't there, which was not normal because, like I said, she couldn't really walk on her own. So she definitely still should have been in bed. So Erica and Paulette's mom, Lizette, began searching the house for her, but it was like she just vanished into thin air. Mauricio came home from work early to help search, but eventually authorities were called in. But Paulette's disappearance wasn't really like any other authorities had ever encountered. The mayor was quickly brought in, and eventually the attorney general of the state of Mexico. So this was a pretty big deal. Together, several different agencies turned the family's home upside down looking for little Paulette, but they found nothing, not even anything surrounding the home. It was a really eerie scene though, because there were no signs of a break-in or robbery, no signs of a struggle, and no signs of a kidnapping. Paulette was just gone. The family did have security cameras up that police hoped would be useful, but after reviewing the footage, there was absolutely no evidence of Paulette leaving or being taken from her bedroom or the house at all. This is when the family really ramped up the investigation and did everything they could to get Paulette's name out there. They handed out hundreds of flyers and posted her story all over social media, and her disappearance really went viral. Tons of billboards were put up, and pretty much everyone in the community knew what was happening. I mean, it also went national too. That's how crazy of a story this was. One of the things that really stand out about this case is the interview Paulette's mom did right after she was reported missing. She's sitting on Paulette's bed where she quite literally disappeared from, addressing her daughter's abductor. She begged for whoever had her to just give her back. They could drop her off at a shopping center or even in a really busy crowd. She didn't care. She just wanted her daughter back. But as this investigation was unfolding, it became very clear that it was being botched. Authorities never sealed off Paulette's bedroom, so any evidence was either contaminated or just completely destroyed. And what's even crazier to me is that right after Paulette disappeared, her mom invited one of her friends to come and stay at the home to help search for her. But let me be super clear, she not only invited her to come and stay in the home, but more specifically, she let her friend stay and sleep in Paulette's bed. Why anyone thought this was a good idea, I have no idea. So day after day, someone was sleeping in Paulette's bed, and as a result, her bed was being made on a daily basis. I really want to emphasize this part because it makes what I'm about to tell you even stranger. So on March 31st, 9 days after Paulette disappeared, her body was found. But where she was found is what's really disturbing. So around the 9-day mark, her room started to smell really bad. And for some reason, authorities decided to completely strip her bed and bedding once again. This is when they made a horrific discovery. There, in her own room, between the mattress and the foot of the bed, was Paulette's body, which had been wrapped in sheets. The very same bed that her mom sat on giving interviews, pleading for her daughter to come back. The very same bed that she went missing from, which was now being slept in every single night by one of her mom's friends. What's really creepy to me and honestly bizarre is how she wasn't found sooner. Several different agencies searched Paulette's room numerous times, even bringing in cadaver dogs. Yet she was never found within that 9 days, which I seriously don't get how that happened. According to the autopsy report, Paulette slept with an orthopedic cloth over her mouth every single night to prevent her from sleeping with her mouth open. When she was found, pieces of this cloth were found on both of her cheeks, and she also showed signs of a blow to her left elbow and knee. Ultimately, her official cause of death was found to be from suffocation. More specifically, mechanical asphyxia due to obstruction of the navel cavities and thorax abdominal compression. Authorities went on to say that her body had not been manipulated after death, meaning she died exactly where she was found, and nobody moved her body after the fact. The autopsy also showed that she had eaten approximately 5 hours before she died. There were no signs of physical or sexual violence to her body at all, and although her exact date and hour of death was never released, authorities speculate her death occurred between 5 and 9 days before being found. It's possible that she died on that very first day/night or shortly after, yet nobody knew she was right there the entire time. Toxicology report was also conducted, which showed no traces of any drugs or toxic substances that would have affected her consciousness. So because of all of this, her death was ultimately ruled an accident. The Attorney General stated that it's unfortunate, but he fully believes that Paulette died by her own means. She tossed and turned so much in the middle of the night that she somehow fell between the mattress and the foot of the bed. And because she wasn't able to speak or move much without assistance, she wasn't able to call out for help or climb out on her own. And then she slowly suffocated to death. As for not finding her for 9 entire days, no one really seemed to have any answers. The room was searched several times, but still she was there the entire time. Because of the weird circumstances surrounding her case, a lot of people started questioning Paulette's parents, and even her mom's friend who slept in the bed. At one point, her parents were even placed on house arrest because they were reportedly giving false statements to police, and her mom's story really started to not add up. Eventually, they were released from house arrest, and no charges were ever filed against either one of them, but some people still questioned their involvement. The family separated after Paulette's death, and her dad was really vocal about not trusting his wife. He said that there was no way that this was an accident at all, and he had his suspicions of her. Paulette's mom, Lizette, was later heard in a leaked recording telling her other daughter to not talk about Paulette's disappearance, because otherwise people would blame her for it. She initially denied ever saying that, but she later confessed that she did in fact say those words, but it was just taken out of context. Paulette was buried not long after this, and her mom didn't allow her dad or any of his side of the family to be there, which is kind of sad. There are a few things that don't add up about this case though. One being how Paulette was there the entire time, but not found for 9 days. These are a couple of quotes from her nannies. According to them, there's just no way that Paulette was there that whole time. Like they insisted, there was 0% chance that Paulette was there. It just was not possible. They made the beds every single day, and Erica herself checked all over the bed and under the mattress, and Paulette wasn't there. Then we have the forensic video that was given to the press by local authorities. This video adds even more questions to this case because if it's credible, there's no way that Paulette wasn't murdered. So the night Paulette was found, a team of 3 forensic experts entered her room and began taking measurements of the bed. This was all being recorded as per protocol, so you can hear them loudly explaining what they were examining. Out of nowhere, one of them says, quote, "Paulette was severely beaten," end quote, on 2 separate occasions, which was weird because at this point, her body hadn't been found yet. Then another investigator started removing the blankets, which then showed 2 large bloodstains. One of them was as large as an adult's head. So then they started stripping the bed down, and in the video you can exactly see when and where her corpse is revealed. It was partially hidden on one side of the mattress. What's super weird is that before her death was ruled accidental, the Attorney General initially stated that, quote, "Without question, Paulette was murdered," end quote. But then this forensic video was leaked to the public, and then he quickly refuted this statement. He then said absolutely no foul play was involved, and Paulette was in fact not murdered. This was super confusing to a lot of people and made them question the authenticity of that forensic video. There's some speculation that that specific video was actually just a reenactment of the crime scene and not of them actually finding Paulette. I mean, this was given to the press directly from local authorities, but some still question if it's real. If it wasn't, I mean, that would explain how the forensic team knew she was beaten before any evidence was found, including her body, because how would you know that with no body? Some think the placement of the camera was just off, and they didn't act shocked or surprised at all when they found her body. It kind of seemed, at least to a lot of people, like they were reading from a script. And if that video was true and there was a lot of blood on her bed like it showed, why wasn't she found sooner? Why did the mom's friend continue to sleep in the bed? And this definitely contradicts what the nanny said. They said they changed her bedding every single day, so personally, I'm leaning on the side of this being a reenactment. I doubt that that amount of blood would go unnoticed for so long, but I could be totally wrong, and that could be a real video of them finding her body. If so, that just makes me have even more questions though. After this investigation was closed, the Attorney General actually resigned from his position, citing not having any more confidence after Paulette's death investigation. He didn't know what to believe, and he felt that someone in this position needed to have confidence to be successful, so he resigned. I thought that that was a little bit odd. In 2010, a YouTube video titled "The Strange Case of Paulette's Pajamas" went viral and drew way more attention to this case. In the video, they clearly show photos of Paulette's body in red and blue reindeer pajamas, but what really shocked everyone was the fact that several days before Paulette was found, her mom gave an interview, and those exact same pajamas were seen in Paulette's room. Obviously not on her body since she wasn't found yet, but they were just hanging in her room. They were seen as Paulette's mom and the reporter were going through Paulette's belongings, remains. So how were they then found on Paulette? That makes no sense and is honestly really creepy to think about. Her mom says that those pajamas seen in the video belong to Paulette's sister, but they were never found in the house after this. And she also never told authorities that they had the exact same PJs. So the big question here is, how did they then end up on Paulette if she'd already been dead and missing for a long time? A lot of people still suspect Paulette's mom in her death, and even the police at one point said that she was the only suspect. Again, she has always denied this and has never been charged in connection to her daughter's death, but it's still odd. Some people theorize that maybe she felt that taking care of Paulette was a burden, so maybe she was responsible for what happened somehow. But again, this has never been proven. I also question why police never secured Paulette's bedroom, as it was an active crime scene, and why another person was allowed to sleep in that very same bed. And overall, I just really want to know how Paulette went missing from her bed, and then 9 days later, after a massive search, was found dead in that very same bed. None of that makes sense to me, and sadly, I don't know if you will ever have the answers. But it's now been 15 years, and whatever happened to Paulette that night, and how her body remained hidden in her bed for 9 days, remains a mystery.
I'm going to show you something very, very sad, and it might make you cry. It made me cry, and it's a little boy talking about his sister passing and what their mom did to her. And I just have to give a mental health warning. It's a 7-year-old little boy, and it's very, very difficult to watch, and it's very, very hard to forget. So if you think that listening to something like this is going to harm your mental health, please skip this video. I will see you in my next one.
Can you tell me what a lie is?
It's not the truth.
Who is this, or what is this?
My mama
Okay. And what is she doing?
killing my sister,
How is she doing that, AJ?
putting her hand over her face.
That woman sitting right there between them. Have you ever seen her before?
Yes, sir.
Who is that?
My mother.
AJ,
Yes, sir.
give me your hand. All right. Here. Here.
I saw that video on my For You page and I just couldn't stop thinking about little AJ, so I looked into the details of the story and now I'm going to share it with you. On August 8th of 2007, authorities received a 911 call from Amanda Lewis. She was calling to report that her little girl, Adriana Hutto, had fallen into the pool and she was blue and unconscious. Amanda Lewis was a single mother living in Esto, Florida with her 2 children, 7-year-old Adriana and 6-year-old AJ. The kids had different fathers. Amanda worked as a nurse assistant in a hospital and she was often gone for long periods of time overnight working night shifts. And oftentimes she would have family and friends help her out with the kids. And raising 2 little kids is not easy, but for Amanda, she found it to be even harder because of Adriana. Adriana had been diagnosed with ADHD, meaning that her brain just worked a little bit different. And she was always excited and curious and full of ideas. She had a lot of energy and big emotions that would make it hard for her to sit still and remain focused because every hour of the day she was full of energy. She was such a happy, imaginative little kid, but she often did need a little bit of help just staying organized and on task, and learning how to work with her personality was hard for Amanda. Even when Adriana was just a little baby, Amanda would say that she had a really hard time bonding with her daughter. Whereas on the other hand, AJ was described to be still very sweet, very kind, very good kids, but he was more so reserved. So the kids were different in that way. And neighbors would often see Amanda losing her patience with Adriana on a regular basis. The morning of August 8th in 2007, Amanda had just gone home from a night shift and she went off to go take a nap, leaving the kids alone to watch TV. And in their backyard, they had one of those pools, like the above ground pools, but the kids were not allowed to play in it unless Amanda or a different adult was supervising them. The pool itself was 4 feet high, so it was hard for the kids to be able to get into the pool by themselves, but they had a little ladder, and when they were not swimming, Amanda would lock away the ladder in their storage shed in the backyard. So eventually Amanda gets up, she starts getting the things together to go out, leave the house with the kids to go run some errands, while Adriana and AJ were playing outside. At some point, according to Amanda, AJ walked inside and he said, "Mom, Adriana is in the pool." But apparently Amanda didn't think anything of it because she knew the ladder was locked away in the shed, and on top of that, Adriana was known to be terrified of water, so it's not like she would have voluntarily gone into the pool by herself, especially knowing that she wasn't allowed to. So Amanda assumed that AJ meant that Adriana was just playing around the pool, so she stayed inside when AJ walked back outside. When she eventually did walk outside, she saw AJ trying to pull his sister out of the water with his little hand, and that's when, according to her, for the first time she realized that Adriana was inside of the pool, completely underwater. She rushed over, pulled her out, saw that she was purple and blue, and she called 911. When paramedics arrived, they saw Amanda sitting on the ground near the pool. They saw Adriana laying on the ground. They rushed over to try and help her because at that point she was still alive. They rushed her over to the hospital in an ambulance, but despite their best efforts, after less than an hour of being in the hospital, 7-year-old Adriana Hutto was gone. Shortly before she passed, when doctors were still holding on to hope, they were explaining the situation to Amanda and they asked her if she had any questions. She only had one question, which was, where is the vending machine? That was her question. When they informed her that her daughter was gone, the doctor said that Amanda showed zero emotion. Adriana's autopsy showed that she passed due to being underwater for too long, and it was ruled an accident and the case was closed. Amanda went to the hospital with Adriana in the ambulance. AJ was taken by his grandparents back to their house to try and get him to cope with what he had just witnessed. Authorities were completely treating this like a tragic accident. They saw a little wagon next to the pool as well as a pan of sorts inside of the pool, and it was their belief that the kids wanted to play in the pool, but before playing they wanted to get the bugs out, so they assumed that Adriana stood on top of the little wagon, reached into the water with the pan to try and scoop out the bugs, accidentally fell in, and then was unable to get out. But as soon as one of the sheriffs got back to the police station, he got a call from AJ's grandparents, and they told him that they needed to talk to AJ immediately for him to tell them what he had just told his grandparents. So AJ was taken to the station and he sat down with investigators. In his first interview, he said, quote, "Mama dunked Adriana into the pool," end quote. And in his second interview, he said, quote, "Mama threw my sister Adriana into the pool," end quote. He said Adriana started screaming and said, quote, "Mama said stop it, so I did stop it. So Adriana screamed, 'AJ called the police,' end quote." He said that his mom held down Adriana's face and he put his little hand over his face to show the investigators how she did it. And he said that his mom did that because she got mad at Adriana for spraying cleaning supplies inside of the house. Now, of course, AJ was 6 years old at the time and authorities knew that, and they knew they had to take this into consideration, that little kids often say things that are not true. But it's the way in which he told the story, the way that his story was always the same no matter how many different times he told it, that really struck a nerve for them. That, on top of the fact that doctors said that her reaction to losing her daughter was extremely weird, was enough for investigators to make the decision to reopen the case, and they began searching for the house for anything that could help them figure out what really happened that day. And the biggest thing that stood out to them, other than the fact that the house was absolutely filthy and dirty and smelled like urine, was the fact that despite having 2 small children, there were no toys at all. When they asked Amanda about this, she said that she would take the kids' toys away as punishment and she would lock them in the outdoor shed. But when they checked the outdoor shed, there were 0 signs of toys. And when they started talking to people who often interacted with Amanda and her kids, they said that Amanda was very harsh on Adriana specifically, and some neighbors even had reason to believe that both of the kids were extremely neglected. Amanda was brought in for questioning and she was told what AJ had said happened. Of course, she denied it. She said that AJ was just a little kid with a big imagination, and she actually did agree to take a polygraph test. She did pass it, but that wasn't enough to change the minds of law enforcement. And in September of 2007, Amanda was charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors offered her a plea deal, giving her the opportunity to plead guilty to manslaughter, avoid a trial altogether, and serve a 10-year-long sentence. But she did not accept it. She wanted to go to trial, and her trial began in February of 2008. AJ, now 7 years old, was the primary witness for the prosecution. The defense tried everything in their power to keep AJ off the stand, saying that he was an unreliable witness, that he was too young, and that his story changed too many times. But the court disagreed because no matter how many times little details shifted, one thing in AJ's story remained the same: the fact that he saw his mother intentionally hold his sister underwater. During the trial, the jury was shown autopsy photos and they heard medical evidence. Adriana had fingerprint-shaped bruises on her forehead, cheeks, and chin, injuries that matched AJ's story of events exactly. And when prosecutors asked Dr. Fox to demonstrate how those bruises could have been made, she slowly raised her hand and pressed it down on her face, mimicking the exact same motion that AJ used when he showed investigators what his mom had done. And it was in that moment that I think it sunk in for everyone that AJ had witnessed what he had been saying this entire time. The trial lasted 4 days, and it took the jury less than 2 hours to find Amanda Lewis guilty, and she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2010, she appealed her sentence, but that was denied. Yeah, I feel like this case is a controversial one in the way that some people think that AJ was absolutely 100% saying the truth, versus others do think that he was too young and that he could have been lying. But I want to know what you guys think. I just had to cover this story because I saw that video of AJ and it's gonna live in my head for years. That is all I have for today's story. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Adriana's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.